You're watching Sapient HR's Leadership Lens Beyond Titles, Episode 2. So let's look at what's Sapient HR. We are a HR consulting firm based out of India, and we are catering into the global market for HR consulting work. Let's define what's the podcast series, why it is termed as Leadership Lens. See, every true leadership is reflected in vision, influence, courage, and the ability to inspire people to perform beyond expectations. And what better than calling HR leaders for this portfolio? What position do I hold or what impact I can create is what the questions being faced by leaders today. So leadership lens beyond titles is a thought-provoking HR leadership podcast series created to explore this shift. The shift is not mental, but it's also on a transformative level from shifting the basis from operational to transformational game changing one. And it focuses on mindset, people, strategy, organization culture, and future ready leadership practices. The objective is to impact what leaders can bring in from their personal experience because those are the live libraries for learning. And we translate this leadership theory into actionable insights that listeners can apply immediately within their organization. We will focus on how do we help organizations which are facing challenges like attracting, retaining talent, building cultures of trust and engagement, managing hybrid and distributed teams, adopting to technology and AI-driven changes, preparing leaders who can guide organizations through uncertainty. New perspectives, practical tools, and forward-thinking strategies to stay relevant and effective. So this is a bridge to gap. There's a there's a gap, and we bridge the gap between leadership and the philosophy and the HR execution. So we would like to warm welcome Ms. Sivasankari from Guidehouse, Director HR. Before we ask ma'am a lot of questions in our podcast series, we'll have a small introductory video to have an update about ma'am, and then we will also request ma'am to share more insights because what we share is less. We would like to have your personal perspectives as well.
Thank you, Edwin.
Thank you, Ms. Shivashankari, for that insights. But we would like to hear your perspective and your journey first.
Thank you so much, Edwin, for a very warm welcome. And thank you, Sapient HR, for inviting me and having me here as part of this podcast series. It's a honor and privilege to be part of such series, that we can add more value and share the insights and knowledge that each of us have and share everything together. I know you've given an introduction about me, but just to share very briefly about me, I've been working as the HR director with Guidehouse currently, but I possess over about 20 plus years of experience. And I've worked with companies like TCS, Wipro, Teleperformance, and currently with Guidehouse. And the journey has been quite exciting because I did not start my career as a HR professional. It was in between that I moved into HR, and earlier I was part of the backend operations, packing process, PMO team, MIS team, all of that. And that kind of helped me pave my path in the HR, which can relate a lot more to business. Otherwise, generally they always have opinion that HR works in a silo. They don't understand the business problem and all of that. But I think this experience kind of helped me to relate more from a business side and give my suggestions and opinions from the HR lens. That really helped.
There's a
Thank you.
wonderful perspective to look at the transition and what changed over. And as we all know, the building might be stronger and stronger can be built only when you have the foundation strong. So I think your exposure to the other line of business and then bringing it back into the HR perspective will bring in a lot of insights for our viewers over here. So our theme for today discussion for the podcast is from policies to performance. So when we look at the judgmental thing, every organization has a lot of policies, beautifully set documentations, well written, well framed, nicely formatted. But here's the question: do they actually drive performance? Because if I think Up in the Air is in a movie, I watch a lot of movies, so I'll keep in a lot of references of movies here and there. We can always add in as well because it's easy for people to correlate to examples which are live. So Up in the Air, everything was processed perfect, but completely disconnected from the people. And then you have something like Unbasivam, no big systems, but pure human connections driving impact. So today's, let's start the conversation. So how do you move from policies to performance?
Correct. So it's a very interesting question. So I will start with the same example that you took up, right? I mean, Anbeshivam, where people connect to people, and that gives a better output or an outcome. That is very, very possible as long as the people that we manage are limited, are smaller in number, where we get to know every individual and everybody is more or less aligned to our thought process, then we don't need a written policy statement. Now, what happens in an organization is every organization wants to grow bigger and bigger. And when you have more headcount, more leaders, different perspective, different ways of handling things, then comes the question of standardization. How do we standardize the experience for everybody? How do we really ensure that everybody is treated equally and correctly? And that is where the policies comes in place, because policies only will tell you what to do. It doesn't really define how to do things. Now, how to do is all depending on people who are managing it, but policies are the basic statement or statements that will ensure that there is no discrepancy in the way that people are treated, and everybody has got a standard framework that people can refer to. So that clearly drives the behavior or the accountability of somebody, or the routine items or the compliance aspects that we need to really follow in an organization. So all of that, the base is, a policy is written and everybody kinds of refers to the policy and proceeds with that. So that's how I see it. But of late, it also, the problem is it is not being followed properly, or it is just there on papers. Policies are there on papers but not in reality, that it is implemented with its true spirit of how it should be implemented. That's where we see a gap, and that's where we see that it is not really enabling performance, or it is not really supporting people, because I think the layer which is responsible for ensuring the policies are rightly implemented across need to also understand the spirit of the policy. What's the purpose of the policy? Why is it there? And a clear ownership of what will happen if we don't follow certain policies, what consequences that we might have to face. All if you understand all of those things, I think as an individual, as a matured people, and as an adult, we all of us will start adhering to policies.
I think there's a lot of perspective being brought in. I could correlate it to the Maslow's theory of needs. The basic hygiene factors can be concluded with regard to policies in place, and the rest of the things can go ahead and we can comply. Okay, so let me put it across like, when does the policy actually enable performance instead of sitting over there? I think you also brought in few perspectives across with that. So, and we have also seen how HR has evolved over a period of time. We were as a personal department, a personal management manager. We have transitioned into a human resource, human capital management. Now we are talking about what kind of an experience we can give it to all the resources. So it's more of a HX, human experience, or a people experience driving the force. I think a lot of perspectives being brought in. I would like to hear how do you feel about in the sense what mindset shifts does HR needs to do, as there has been a lot of changes across. So how do you connect it to the performance and the evolution of HR?
Right. Thanks, Edwin. This is again yet another interesting question, and it really reflects how over every decade things are really changing. And if you look at like the personal department, like 30, 40 years before, it was more of just managing the headcount purely. And so people just check the attendance maximum and the payroll process. That was more of only considered as HR. And later came in more of the business HR concept, where each businesses had a HR, and they were looking after the respective business, and some element of fun factors came into picture and all of those things. And then came an era of HR business partners, right? So it's just not the HR, but you're now more of a business partners, where you're really getting involved and understanding the problems of the business, and trying to support them with whatever possible interventions that you could bring on with. Now, then after now, what we call is more of the different organization have different names that are put across. Some of them say they are the people manager, they are people accelerator, or but the focus is slightly shifting more to people, and how do we actually align them to the business goals and everything. Now, as a HR, it is really, really important that we understand the business really very well, so that when we are going there as a HR consultant or a HR partner to solve their problem, we are able to understand their root cause. And that is very important for a HR, for them to come out with possible changes or possible recommendations that they can make to business. Now, what can really help this? Now, data is really very important, right? So now everything is into data. So I think a lot of tools that will really help us, and analysis of the data also is really very important. So when we enable the respective business manager, the business leaders with the right data and right analytical interpretations, the right dashboards, and right recommendations, right? So dealing with the Gen Z is also very difficult. So it's just not on the data as well, but it is also how we manage the people as well. But to convince the business, we are definitely bound to stick to the data and facts that we share. So that's what I think the HR should develop on, some of the skills that they should develop on. Should really be close with the business as well. They should understand the business, so they really understand the problem from their side as well.
I think that also brings in the perspective of shifting HR as enablers and people of change. You brought in perspectives of like how HR has shifted from an operational perspective to a strategic arm for the business. And I think that has also brought in perspective of like the movie in Moneyball. They didn't change the players, they changed the way performance was measured. That's one perspective I could gauge and put it across. And I think we also need to have options. Like I think I feel a bit of like either the movie like Three Idiots or in Hindi and Nanban in Tamil, wherein systems are designed to help, but sometimes it does end up restricting.
Right. Absolutely. So, interesting fact is also that when we even when we talk about more of data and business, one thing that's very important is adaptability, because as a human being we need to adapt to situations, adapt to different set of people. Everything is really very important because one size does not fit everybody, so it is really really important we analyze the data appropriately, and when we also look at some of bringing some change to the system or bringing some change to the way things are, we have to be highly adaptable. So that is really important as well. And that's what even in Nanban, if you see, like every time there is a situation, he tries to break a myth, like what people are always used to. And he is literally making them adapt to the reality and practicality. That's very important.
I would take my personal example over here, as I have done my engineering and then I'm done my MBA and then I'm into the HR space. So what perspectives that brings is every time somebody says it has to be done this way, being an engineer, it strikes to me like why this way? The questioning part. And I think our education system is also evolving and we have given us the leverage to ask the right questions. And I think the HR has now started asking the right question to the business leaders. And that's why we have a space at the table. And shifting from that perspective, very detailed experience you could bring in, like the adaptability, the resilient, and how do we look at those quotients across? Because we are not only looking at the emotional quotient, the adaptability quotient, social quotient, and the economics. I think a lot of insights from your end, ma'am. And I think, okay, so now you brought in how do we bring in change? So I'll put it a perspective like we're discussing about policies and culture. It's a big turmoil of things because policies say something, the culture, how it goes is different. Then you have various segment of workforce coming into the picture. The expectations have changed it. So I think what really drives performance? Is it policy? Is it culture or is it leadership?
Okay, so in my personal opinion, I will say it is a combination of all the three, because all the three are very, very important. Now, you can have a very strong policy, but if the leadership is not driving those policies with the right culture, then nobody is going to follow that. And there's always going to be escalations, there's always going to be arguments with employees, dissatisfaction, all of that. Now let's assume the vice versa situation. A very weak policy, but a very strong culture, right? This can hold to an extent, because as long as you have a very strong culture in place, that people are adhering to certain things, not just on the books, but as a way of culture, as a way of a practice that people are really doing it. Now, this can work for a smaller group, but this may not work as a larger group, because without a written policy framework or a statement, having a similar culture across will become very, very, very difficult, because there will be multiple leaders, and that's where we started, right? And leaders are the role models for the organization, I would say. So the more the leaders adhere to policies and they create a very welcoming culture, and they reiterate the importance of following the policies and having a very vibrant culture, that people don't need to fear to follow a policy, but understanding the right spirit behind the policy, that kind of elevates the entire mood, or mood of the entire working set of employees, right? Because everybody feels that they are being told what to do. They've not been given a freedom of how do they want to do in the way that they would like to do things. But as an organization, we are all looking at outcome. The moment we give so much of freedom to employees, again, in a larger organization, it becomes very difficult to monitor that, and that becomes very difficult to check the compliance part and all of those things. So it is very, very important that we have policies, that we have a strong culture that the leaders follow and ensure that we have a very fair, consistent approach, and we have a very what to say, open door policy, where people, if they feel very uncomfortable about anything, that they're able to approach, or that people, if they feel that some of the policies are really not making sense, and if they really want to bring up some change, they should be able to share that, and come back to rephrase the policy wherever it is required as well.
I think you just nailed it, saying everything is important, but it also has to be top-down approach because it has to be driven from the leadership. Absolutely fine. And I think you also brought in the perspective which I looked at, like the Johari window. Some things we know, some things the other one knows, and some
Yes,
things we don't know, and some things are known to everyone
to
across.
us. Yeah. Yeah, so the blind window is really very important there, because a lot of time we assume that we know certain things, and we I think as a human being we are always not very receptive to negative criticism or a feedback, to work on those feedbacks, right? I think that particular shift, if we bring across, that is primary requirement for the HR as well, because when they have to really look across, and when they have to be really adaptable, they should really understand and be very open to criticisms and feedbacks. But across business, this is one important element, even for leaders, right? The leaders also will have to be open enough to accept some of the feedbacks and really see what needs to align with the culture, and how they can really support that and be part of those changes. Those are really very important.
I always take inferences from movies, so I'll put it across. I think in Hindi you have a movie called as Chak De India,
Ah,
and in
correct.
Tamil we have Kanna and the Bigil movie.
Bigel,
So
yeah, quite a lot of movies,
there
yes.
was no magic policy. It's just belief, leadership, and culture.
Absolutely.
So
This policies only helps you to give you a guardrail, right? I mean, what you cannot do beyond and things like that. So that those guardrails are also important.
absolutely. So I think I need to ask you the next question is which policy, it's your personal opinion, which policies today you think seriously needs to be rethinked in the organization?
So again, on my personal opinion, I will definitely say, performance management is something that every organization should look at, because I think a lot of things, with the help of AI and tools, that we are able to change a lot of, shorten the time taken for doing a lot of things, and AI is bringing a lot of transactional work getting done in minutes, saving a lot of time for people, be it business or be it HR or be it any enabling functions. I think AI is a great tool that we should be using. Now, there comes a question, then how do we really measure the performance of all the employees as well, And I think now many organizations have moved out of the bell curve system and all of those things, but still some organizations do follow. And the approach that we take to give regular feedback to the employees and ensuring that we don't put them down just because, we have some forcible system that has to really fit into the curve and things like that. So performance management should not be looked at an annual cycle as well. It has to be a continuous cycle. I know it is time consuming, but that's the only way that we connect with people. We, when I say the respective managers connect with the respective team members, sharing the feedback and everything, and giving clarity for the role, right? I mean, if something is working, very good, appreciate them. If something is not working, don't pull them down, but share them with your thoughts of how this can be improved and how this can be taken to the next level, and appreciating and identifying the right set of people to elevate to the next level, promoting them, moving them, internal movements. All of those are really important. And when it is done to the right set of population, people will always appreciate it. Sometimes when we don't have a strong performance management, people tend to become a little biased with these approach. And when wrong people get elevated, and that's when the employee lose faith or trust, and they don't like continue to working in particular organization. And they always say people don't leave the company, they leave the managers, right? So it is really important that the manager really shares the regular feedback with the team and really appraise the person appropriately. So I think performance management is something that we really need to relook at
I
as
think
the
every
time moves.
time I ask a question, you take me to the next question across. So perfectly fine. Okay. So we looked at how we are looking at the policy which needs to rethink. So my next segment of questioning was with regard to how do we design performance-driven policies. I think you brought in few perspectives to that, how we go about and everything. And I think I can correlate it to the Dave Ulrich model. There are few things which are transactional that can be moved in. You have the strategy part and the outcome. So how do we map the four quadrants across and look at transformation? That's what a lot of insights you had shared in across. Okay, so can we look at and you also brought in what might have worked earlier might not be of relevance today in the perspective of business. And you also brought in the third perspective of AI, the artificial intelligence. And now it's about the skill latency as well. If you look at our parents, they would have worked with one skill in an organization and sustained with that skill. When you look at our journeys, we would have shifted and upskilled ourselves over a period of time. But now that skill has also got reduced into like every 3 months, the skill is changing. Every 1 month, the business is changing. So I think the adaptability quotient and the transformation which you brought in is a fresh perspective. Okay, so can we look at the movie Surare Potra? And
Mm,
the moment the system becomes simple, I think the performance took place. I think you brought
correct.
in a great insights to keeping it very simple by saying what works, let's keep to it. What doesn't work, let's look at revamping it across. But I think it comes with the kind of experience you had brought in to look at putting at those complex things across in a very subtle way and in a very simple manner. So kudos to your journey and the transformation.
Thank you, Edwin. So I think, see, we are also adapting, right? I mean, probably the way that we worked 10 years before and the way we are working now, a lot of things have evolved, a lot of things have changed. Simple process like when we were the personal department, like I told you, it was like attendance keeping and more of a payroll. And now, if you look at everybody, every organization has got that access swipe, and that is integrated with their leave management system automatically. There are a lot of work that can get automated. Now, that does not really mean that we won't have jobs. There will be, job cuts and things like that. It's just that we'll have to learn something new. We'll have to rework on other aspects, and people factor can never be replaced. So, that's something that we always have to concentrate on. But the tools are really going to help us by getting things done faster and better. And but that always, like since you always took the movie references, I will also take a reference. Like in the Endiran movie, right? I mean, they always show in part one, they always show you how chitty, if used properly, can give you better results. But if it is not used, I mean, if it is misused, it can also destroy things. So we'll have to be really very careful with how we manage the data and people. If you don't use your appropriate analytical skill, that can give you a drastic outcome as well.
My next segment was about data, tech, and performance. So thank you for leading it across to that journey across. Okay, so now the big shift we are looking at a lot of changeover in the data policies, the data protections, how do we treat data and everything. When you look at India, we were being very lenient about asking a lot of personal questions during the first screening questions and everything. That has been very nominal, or that has been very normal to ask a lot of questions. But when you look at the global workforce and the questioning part, it becomes very strategic to avoid those questions. So now with the data being changing and the shift over, and I think we also have the DPDP Act in
Yes.
going for implementations and phases across. So how do we shift this decision making from the HR perspective? Because I think performance is individual, outcome based. How do we look at those terminologies with the use of technology? That's one part to the question. The next is how can the HR look at data from this perspective and predict the performance issues?
Right. So now, when we talk about a lot of privacy, data privacy related things, I think with DPDP Act coming in effect, and this will take some more time for people to really get used to this, because I think in India, uh, with the population that we have and so many loopholes, we will take more time to ensure that the restrictions are there, and the awareness for people is a big problem, right? I mean, organization, of course, because they are bound to follow the legal aspects of it, so we'll start following that. But bringing that awareness to all public is a real challenge, right? Not many of them are still aware what rights they hold under DPDP Act. Like they have the right to edit or to delete the record, so those are still not aware. So that really will take some more time to come. But when we look at how HR is going to adapt to these changes, or how we can effectively use these changes, we don't need certain specific identifying factors for us to really come up with the performance related issues. I think the data, there are a lot of analysis which really don't need specific gender or specific identifying criterias. But a lot of leaves, analysis on a leave can give you signals on attritions, or some gaps that can come over frequently. If you see up and down in the performance of an employee, there could be some situations that are stressing down the employee. So have a one-to-one checks with the person to understand what's really happening, how we can really try and help that individual as such. And when you also see a drastic decline in somebody's performance, or somebody making a lot of error all of a sudden, who was a good performer back then, but suddenly now their behavior pattern changes and all of those things, I think these are some identification or some red flags that HR will have to look at. I wouldn't give the complete responsibility and ownership to HR as well. These are primarily the responsibility of the respective team managers as well, because they manage day in and day out the employees. But HR should be in consultation with business on regular intervals and all of these things, so that they really can add more value to business as well, and in terms of identifying these red flags in advance.
I think a lot of perspective to look at how do we treat the data how we treat the individual. We're also talking about the retention. How do we retain those data? I think we also have ISO 42000, which talks about AI. You have 27001, which talks about information security. And we also have ISO 27701, which talks about privacy management system. So people who are looking at the gamut of compliances and governance, I think they can refer to few systems and frameworks which are already in place. So very nicely put about like how in simple ways we can bring in governance, because we are looking at not only empowering, but also looking at educating the people across, because real transformation happens by uplifting the next generation. And I think as HRs, we owe that to the generations to come. At how do we look at transforming people? Very fresh perspectives, ma'am. The next question would be in the segment of, I'll divide it into like the leadership and the accountability. So I think policies, we said like policies are important, but they don't drive the performance. So, and leaders will do across. So how do these leaders have to look at interpreting the policies, or how do they not use it for their own advantages? When you look at a lot of corporations, they failed because the leaderships had a lot of data which was misused or abuse of power. So how do you look at those accountabilities and detailing?
So when we talk about this, it's a top-down approach, right? Across hierarchy, people will have to keep checking on their one downs below and whether they are really consistent and following in all the adhering to all the policies or ensuring the real standards are being met, right? Obviously, when the topmost person is following but not checking on their direct reports, they may tend not to follow it. So it is really very important. The trust has to be there, the faith has to be there, but also some amount of monitoring whether their immediate direct reportees are reflecting that. Are they really taking accountability and ownership of any changes that are happening? So it's just not the policy implementation as well. It can be any other change, right? A change has to be driven from top to down. So when they do that and when they walk the talk and when they become the real example, obviously their immediate one downs will start following that. And similarly, the similar monitoring also has to happen to their one downs. So when they follow this approach, I think that kind of drives the adaptability with a lot of managers prioritizing and giving importance to policies and adherence, right? And that kind of then creates a mechanism where automatically it is driven, right? It is like a train, right? If all the compartments are connected appropriately, only the first wheel moves, everything is being pulled on track correctly, right? But if somewhere it is getting derailed, now the first part is safer, but the compartments coming after that will get impacted. That's exactly what happens here as well.
Okay, that's a fresh perspective to look at how the train runs in across, and the rest of the people follow. And I think you kept it very subtle way of saying the leader needs to ensure that compliance and governance is being taken care, because the onus is on them to ensure everyone in the organization complies.
Yes.
And as you rightly said, if the leader itself is blind, everyone will go down the hill.
Correct. So I have not used a very technical terminology of governance and inspection and all of those things, but I think just putting across in a layman term that you follow and you monitor your one downs, automatically things will fall in place, and that is applicable for everybody, Owen as well.
Okay, so from that perspective, now we are looking at the future HR playbook. So how do you design a playbook which will have a sustenance for the next decade?
So I will say, there are, I mean, we are talking about the same thing again and again. So the culture is really very important. The people that we drive, so the people leadership, the entire leadership is really very important. and the right usage of data and technology is really very important. I think these are three different aspects which will really drive the entire, defining the entire working population itself. I wouldn't say really only from the HR perspective, from a business perspective, from an organization perspective. I think these are the three important pillars which we really have to concentrate on for the next decade. And the way we deal with people also is really very important because generations are changing. They are not going to directly accept whatever was told to them, like how 2 decades before, 3 decades before people were taught. So they want more freedom, they want quick results. So we expect the leader also to really change according to the needs of the current generation. And it's also really important that when we talk about diversity, we are only talking about diversity of male, female, or having, the other gender people, or, having more of physically challenged and all of that. But when we talk about diversity, it is about cultural diversity, it is about age diversity. Right now, how do we make a Gen Z work with Gen X? Or people before that as well, who are really the leaders in this decade right now. Now, those are all something that we need to work on, and we have to constantly keep learning. I think learning is one aspect that will drive these three pillars: culture, people leadership, and data with right technologies, I will say.
Absolutely. I think you brought in the perspective like the future feels more like Avengers Endgame. So you have like collaboration, you have like agility, and you have like purpose. So I think the
Yes.
three things will bring in accountability and connectivity across. So wonderfully detailed, ma'am.
Thank you, thank you. So we don't want Thanos to rule, right? Of course. So we want all the superheroes to rule the world. So it's really important. These three pillars are really taken care, people leadership, culture, and data with right technologies.
This podcast would be telecasted across over YouTube and other social media channels across for people who could not attend us on a live mode. So, what's your advice to the younger generation or younger Indvin or younger Shivasankari across? Like they would be watching us. So, what's the advice for the future HRs?
So I think we've spoken a lot about this again and again. Learn, be adaptable. That's really, very important. Resilience is again one another thing which people will really have to focus on because everything will not be success at the first step or the first stage. So you need to be really patient enough to retry it, not quit. If you don't succeed, so keep learning. That's really very important, and be very adaptable to the change. That's what I would say.
Okay, that's a very fresh perspective to look at how do we make them ensure they keep revisiting themselves and upskilling themselves. So I think before we go for the closing part and everything, we'll have a quick round of rapid fire. So I'll ask you something. You say it is either like yes and no. It's not both. Okay.
Okay.
No overthinking. Relax, and you are the guest of honor, and you have your say. We are open for the further discussions on that. Okay. So for the first one is policy or principle. Okay. Compliance or culture.
Culture.
Data or instinct.
Data.
Performance reviews or continuous feedback.
Continuous feedback.
Only HR myth you want to bust. One word or two words or one sentence.
I will say HR are mostly treated as only, people who create fun elements in the organization, not being taken very seriously. So that is one myth that I would like to burst because HR bring different perspective to the business and to bring in a lot of changes from a people perspective.
Great insights. I think we shifted bases from like why from policies to performance. So we look down at the discussion like why HR is beyond the policies. Then we looked at the transition phase, what has been the evolution of HR. And then we looked at policies and culture. Then we also looked at how do we design the performance driven policies across. And then we brought in fresh perspectives like how HR can act as a business partner. And then we also put some light on like data, tech, and performance. We then discussed about leadership and accountability. And you also brought in fresh perspective about what lies in the future. So we talked about the future HR playbook. So I would request if there are any participants who have any questions or anything to say on the podcast, we'll be happy to take that. And we can't every time get a senior learned person like Miss Sivasankari to be on live where you can ask questions. So I leave the forum open for any questions you have.
I don't think nobody wants to put me on spotlight now.
Ma'am, you're already on the spotlight. You are the guest of honor for our Leadership Lens Beyond Titles episode 2.
Yeah.
See, I have also worked as a professor in a college. So when I have no questions, I usually conclude like saying like either everything has been understood or everything is not being understood.
I hope it is the former part,
The
not the
formal
later.
part, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, ma'am, you have any pointers which we might have missed over this discussion, which would bring in more values to the people watching in the future?
I don't have any specific other points to add because we've been discussing a lot of different perspectives for the last hour. And I would just like to take this opportunity to thank Inven, you for providing me this opportunity, and Sapien HR for providing me this opportunity. And as we always keep saying, keep learning. That's the only thing. Knowledge is the best thing that can make you the best version of yourself and a better version of yourself all the time. So learning is a very important aspect.
Thank you, ma'am, for ensuring that we keep upskilling ourselves. So, for the people on live mode, I've shared the LinkedIn IDs of our guest of honor, Miss Shivashankari, and we are also hosted by Sapient HR, Dr. Arun, Dr. William, and myself. We shared our links. We'll be happy to connect with people. And thank you for being with us over the past hour, listening to what kind of a lot of insights which Miss Shivashankari could bring into the picture. A lot of perspective, a lot of personal touch, a lot of empathy, and a lot of simple things which ma'am had brought into the picture of a very complex process called as performance and policies. So I think that's rightly being said. For people who come with experience, everything is a cakewalk, and that experience is what leads the people to the next level of transformation. So what I think ma'am said in the last conclusion part was everything will happen and would happen. But the only thing is how do we keep reinventing ourselves, reskilling ourselves. I think I can correlate to the story of a simple caterpillar transforming it into a cocoon and transforming into a butterfly. The journey has to be ours, and we need to take the ownership. That's what is the part of detailing. And I think everyone gets an opportunity, and that opportunity will strike only when we are prepared. Dhoni was not Dhoni before. He got an opportunity and he transformed. And all formats of cricket, he could bring India, glory to India on that perspective. So this is Indrini Joel, your host for the day. But before we conclude, a few thoughts which I would leave it open for the people who are watching us and people who will watch us live when we have this transcript across to various social media channels. Brilliant insights. Thank you, ma'am, for that. And if you take one thing, it is this: policies can guide people, but performance that comes from belief, clarity, and ownership. And like in the Hindi movie Tare Zameen Par shows us, when you truly understand people, performance is not forced; it follows. I think that's what you brought in the perspective of the train. It will go and it will follow you across. And thank you for this wonderful conversation and wishing you a great day. And that's Indwin signing off for your episode 2 of leadership titles or leadership beyond titles. And thank you, ma'am, for your valuable time.
Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you, Edwin. Thank you all.
Dr. Arun, you can cut the
Stop.
recording. Yeah. Ma'am,
I
you
will
want to
you
leave?
stop. I will leave. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Take care. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good
Thank
day.
you, ma'am. Thank you.